What's good, y'all? HB Punch and Profit. So let's talk about it. 1 second this fight's on, 1 second this fight is off. Right? Terence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. I'm one of the few people who said that this fight could happen, and I even went a step further and said if this fight happened, that Terence Crawford would beat Canelo Alvarez. And a lot of you would shame me for saying that, but you shamed me for saying that Usyk would become undisputed before he took on Joshua and Fury. You shamed me for saying that Terence Crawford, when I said Terence Crawford was going to dog walk Earl Spence, and he absolutely did, one of his easiest fights. And, there's a lot of things you're going to say I'm wrong about, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree. But one of the reasons I don't like to talk about fights before the press conference happens, where both fighters are sitting at the table and this fight is being presented to the public, there's no reason really to talk about these fights. But there's a greater narrative here, and that's that: is Canelo a duck? That's the question. Is Canelo a duck? Because right now he seems on his duck sauce in his duck season. Because it's just not adding up what he's saying and what he's doing. And I have no problem with what he's doing. I'm for the boxers because I box myself. I'm for them. I want them to make as much money as possible. This is their business, and they have to be careful, and they have to treat this game like a business, or it will chew them up and spit them out. So I'm all for the fighter, but what I'm not for is capping. What I'm not for is saying I'm trying to be great and you're not doing that. Okay, I'm looking for the next best fights, and then you're doing exactly the opposite. I'm cool with you getting paydays, but just say hey, and he is essentially telling you fans that. He's essentially telling you, hey man, like I'm moving how I want to move. He's just not. He's saying it without really saying it, right? Because he's supposed to be a Mexican legend. He's supposed to be a Mexican warrior. And but essentially what he's telling you is like, look, I'm looking for easy fights and I'm as big of a payday as possible, but the easiest fight at the same time. He's looking for that mix. Now, I'm not saying this fight with Terence Crawford isn't going to happen. I'm not saying this fight with Benavidez is going to happen. I find it very hard to believe that he's not going to take one of those fights. There's too much money. It's too much money for him to. I mean, I already know he's rich and he's probably got his investments and he's set for the rest of a life. But man, you telling me you're not going to take one of these big fights when you got Turkey Allah Sheikh throwing his wallet at you? Whew, that's hard to believe. And if you're not, that really says a lot about you and what you're currently doing and in what you're trying to leave in terms of your legacy. But nothing's making sense what Canelo's saying. Well, he doesn't want to take on Benavidez initially because he doesn't want to fight a fellow Mexican. But then he goes and he beats up his next door neighbor, Jaime Munguia. At least Benavidez is Mexican American. Some people even argue whether he's full blooded Mexican. Not that it matters, but I'm just trying to make the greater point. It's like, well, hey, you don't want to face a fellow Mexican, but then you beat the shit out of Jaime Munguia. Okay, well, then you go on and say, well, Benavidez, I'm not going to get credit for beating him. He's not that good of a fighter and all that. Don't quote me word for word, but roughly saying that. But, then you beat up on Berlanga. And I understand Jaime Munguia, there's a selling point, right? Mexican versus Mexican, and even though you totally went against what you said, and then, Edgar Berlanga, Puerto Rico versus Mexico, and there's some selling point there. But you're not going to get credit for beating Berlanga. I thought that was crazy. I was like, he's way beneath you. Unless you're doing that for a warm up fight, but clearly it wasn't a warm up fight. Canelo is looking for fights that will make him enough, get him a great payday, but be an easy fight for him. Okay, and then now we got this matchup with Skull. And I've never heard of this guy. And maybe he's good. Just because you haven't heard of a fighter doesn't mean he is no good. He might be. I have to look at the film study. But I'm sorry, you have Benavidez out there, you have Terence Crawford out there, and you have possibly Better Biev or Bivol you can take on. And I'm sure there's a couple or several other names out there that you can take on and get good credit for beating that opponent. But I'm sorry, you're not going to get much credit for beating Skull. But you just said you wanna challenge. You wanna get credit. Then you say you don't want to take on Terence Crawford because he's a smaller guy. How am I gonna get credit for beating Terence Crawford? But how are you getting credit for beating Berlanga, Skull, and Mungia? How? But you don't want to take on one of the pound for pound best fighters. I don't want to hear nothing about this size thing. We saw what Usyk did. We saw what Manny Pacquiao has done. And Terence Crawford is likely to fall within that same category. He is in that category. Don't give me this small crap. You beat Terence Crawford, you're going to get credit for that. More so credit than the bullshit fights you've been taking. Don't give me that. Terence Crawford is a pound for pound best fighter, and I tell you what, he's probably compared to Benavidez, he's the tougher matchup. You're going to be dealing with a switch hitter. You're going to be dealing with a smaller fighter who's probably going to be quicker, better cardio than you in the later rounds. He's got some pop if coming up in weight division. I'm sure he still has respectable power as he has proven. Okay, I'm sorry, you're not giving me that shit. Terence Crawford, I guarantee you, is a problem for Canelo Alvarez, and that's exactly why this fight might not go down. You got all the money being thrown at you right now. You're gonna have this big event. You have the size advantage, and still you don't want to take this matchup. And I'm gonna hear the fans say this bullshit. Well, Crawford's not happy with his payday. No bullshit. Crawford wants this fight, and I know he'll take a pay. He'll take lower pay compared to Canelo Alvarez to make this fight happen. If this fight doesn't go down, it's because of Canelo Alvarez. Now I'm gonna give Canelo a shot because I think there's one scenario that makes sense to why he's not taking this fight. And one scenario is that he saw the last fight with Benavidez versus Morrell, and he sees something he can exploit in Benavidez now. He didn't see that weakness. He may have started to see a chink in the armor, okay, when Benavidez came up in weight, okay, and faced that Ukrainian fighter. I forgot his name. Very good fighter. And then he saw this matchup with Morrell, and he said, you know what? I like this matchup now. Let's switch it up. Fuck this Terence Crawford shit. Let's get the Benavidez. He's the bigger guy. I'm going to get more credit for beating him. Plus, I see some holes in his game. I think him coming up in weight, the power is not the same. He seems to be a weight bully, which I've said about Benavidez. I said one of the questions I had for Benavidez is he just a weight bully? He looks phenomenal against smaller guys, but against the last two big guys he faced, not as convincing, right? Now, I still think that it's a tough matchup if Benavidez and Canelo go against each other. I still think Benavidez has some advantages stylistically. I don't think it's an easy fight for Canelo Alvarez to take on Benavidez. Okay, but from that last performance, you know, I really think Canelo's chomping at the bit now and saying, I'd rather take on that guy than take on the switch hitter who's going to move all night, who's a high IQ boxer, who's going to have better cardio than me, and I don't know how good his power is going to be moving up in weight. Could be good, could not be. And if I lose to him, it's going to look really bad. If I lose to Benavidez, it is what it is, right? My fans will still love me. And they'll still love you if you lose to Crawford, but it'll be a little bit excusable. It'll be more excusable than losing to Terence Crawford. I think Canelo will, a lot of people will say he got exposed if he loses to Terence Crawford than loses to Benavidez. Now that's the only scenario that I can see why this fight with Terence Crawford is not going down, because Canelo's now saying, hold up, hold up, hold up. I saw the last fight with Benavidez. Let's get that fight made. Because I think Turkey Al Sheikh just wants Canelo on his card. That's all I think he wants. And if you can put another solid name on there with him, like Benavidez, it doesn't matter whether it's Terence Crawford or Benavidez. I think Turkey just wants that to go down. Or maybe Canelo doesn't even want Turkey in the picture at all. But that's the only excusable thing. And then the dream scenario is if Canelo is saying, I'm waiting to see what happens with Beterbiev Bivol. And if Beterbiev wins, I want that fight with Beterbiev. I'll take on Skull for a warm up, and then we're going to graduate and try to go undisputed against Beterbiev. You know, if Bivol wins the rematch against Beterbiev, then that fight is going to be on hold because they're going to have a third fight go down. Okay, so that would put it off the table, but that is highly unlikely. I know for a fact that Canelo does not want any smoke. Why he couldn't deal with Bivol. What the hell makes you think he wants to go up against Better BF? No chance. He doesn't want any smoke with Better BF, and I don't think he wants any smoke with Bivol, especially now Bivol's. I think he's going to be way more of a problem. I think Bivol TKOs Canelo Alvarez in a rematch if they go up against each other. And I know that Canelo Alvarez has one of the best chins in boxing. I genuinely mean that. I think Canelo has one of the best chins in boxing that I've ever seen. But I think if he goes up against Bivol with this evolved version, I think he's going to get pieced up and TKO'd. And Bivol said he's going to sit on his punches, and he gained the confidence in standing and hanging with Better Biev. You made it 12 rounds with Better Biev, and that you think you're going to worry about Canelo? I guarantee you, Bivol in this next fight, he said he was going to sit on his punches more because he wants to go for the W against Better Biev. What do you think he would do to Canelo in a rematch? So I don't see those fights. I don't think Canelo wants any smoke with those guys. The only excuse for Canelo is to take on Benavidez. And the only reason he wants to take on Benavidez, because he didn't before, is because he now sees some weaknesses he can exploit. He sees that Benavidez may not be what he seems coming up in weight. But he's ducking. I'm sorry, that's a fact, you guys. He's ducking. Now, I stand corrected. Maybe the fight does happen. Maybe we're just trying to hype it up, and maybe we get one of those fights. But this skull matchup, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a warm up, right? But it seems just like another payday for Canelo, and his fans will co-sign it. Even when Mayweather, I'm a huge Floyd Mayweather fan and what he did in boxing, but when he took on Andre Berto, I called bullshit. Okay, when he took on Maidana for a rematch, I called bullshit. And there's a few other fights where on the back end of his career where I called bullshit. It's like, and that's cool. You want to get your pension, you want to get your paydays for your last few fights and retire with big money. I get that. I'm cool with that. But don't sit there and be like, I'm the best ever. I'm the greatest of all time. Whatever bullshit you say, it's got to match what you're doing. And at that time, what Floyd Mayweather was doing and what he was saying weren't adding up, just like Canelo. Canelo said, I want to be great. I want to take on challenges, and I want to get status for beating guys. It's just like, well, you have all the options in the world, and you seem to be picking these no-name fighters or these guys who have no business even in the same ring with you unless you're just going in there for a warm-up, but you're not even doing it for a warm-up. You're legitimately going against these guys and taking them on and acting like you deserve credit for it. So I know I heard a lot of feelings today. I know some of you have Canelo posters in your room and you pray to him. But it's nothing personal. I just call it like I see it. I love Terence Crawford, man. I've preached and vouched for him. But I've said that I think Boots Ennis gives him problems. I think that Boots Ennis can beat Terence Crawford. Okay? That's my personal opinion. And I'm a huge fan of Terence Crawford. Okay, but I just call it like I see it. But one of the things I said that Terence Crawford has an excuse to duck Boots Ennis because legitimately he's not going to get a payday from Terence Crawford, especially where he's at in his career. It's a dangerous fight, high risk, low reward. If he can get a fight with Canelo Alvarez, then that excuses him from ducking Jerron Boots Ennis. Okay, it makes sense. But Canelo is ducking all these fighters for who? I don't know. It just doesn't seem he's ducking for any legit reason. Okay, I love Boots Ennis, but I called him out. I said, hey, he's emotionally and mentally immature as a fighter, and he needs to develop that. Okay, he's mentally and emotionally immature. I think he's going to next be one of the next great pound for pound fighters. I think he's going to achieve great things, become undisputed in multiple divisions, but he's mentally and emotionally insecure and immature. I just call it like I said. I got nothing against Canelo. I'm actually love what he does. I love how he has evolved over his career. To see him kind of blend, especially after facing Mayweather, some of the American style defense and incorporate that Mexican style together. Those two styles of boxing has been very fun to watch, and I think it's it's very commendable the way he has evolved over his career and transformed as a fighter, especially with that Mexican background where, they try to make you one style. You're a pressure fighter, you cut the ring off, and you're relentless. But he has done some sort of this hybrid, right, between American and Mexican style fighting, and I think that's really cool. So I am a fan of Canelo Alvarez, and I love that he brings a lot of attention to the sport, and I love the Mexican fan base. But you guys, you just gotta chill. Just because somebody's critical of your fighter doesn't mean we hate them, or we and I'm sure there is. I know there's a racial component to boxing, right? A lot of that, but that has nothing to do. I'm a biracial man, so I have no dog in any race, and this has nothing to do with that to begin with. It's just I call it like I see it. And right now, I'm sorry, it looks like Canelo is ducking. But I do believe that, and I will give him a chance to make one of those big fights happen with Benavidez or Terence Crawford, or maybe he'll pull another name out that we didn't suspect, and it will be a formidable challenge and a respectable opponent. But until then, I gotta call it duck sauce, man. So this is HB Punch and Profit. Comment down below, like the video, subscribe. Peace.